The following news flash is brought to you by the Lone Star Lowdown, providing your daily bulletins for the commodities market. Today in history, news updates, and the inside scoop into the tides of the alternative. Markets for Monday, March 28th, 2016 are currently trading with gold at $1,220.70 an ounce, silver $15.21 an ounce, Texas crude $39.46 a barrel, and Bitcoin is currently sitting at about 421 U.S. currency. Today in history, the year 1774, the Coercive Acts, as known by the Brits, a series of punitive laws, were passed by the British Parliament after the Boston Tea Party. They were meant to punish the Massachusetts colonists for their defiance. These acts were known as the Intolerable Acts by the American patriots because they viewed them as an arbitrary violation of the rights of Massachusetts. The Coercive Acts, which led to the First Continental Congress and protests, were passed in Parliament today in history. In recent news, the Granite Shoals Police Department, a Central Texas PD in a town of about 5,000 northwest of Austin, issued a breaking news alert on Facebook, cautioning residents that meth and heroin in the area could be contaminated with the life-threatening disease Ebola. The Fake Sting Post Facebook alert urged the public not to ingest those illicit drugs until it had been properly checked for possible Ebola contamination. Apparently, a woman allegedly brought in her meth so the police department could analyze it for Ebola. She was awarded the winner of the Facebook Post challenge. Interestingly, Sergeant Chris Decker sees this as some sort of PR. He posted, "I hope this will allow you to see who we are. Humans just like you. We have families, friends, lives, laugh, cry, and bleed all the same. Unfortunately, Mr. Decker, it's not until we relinquish the power to punish naive, victimless addicts who want to be treated just as humanely as you do that we can have a humane society." The FBI got the bright idea of using an alternative method that didn't involve Apple in order to crack into the infamous San Bernardino iPhone belonging to the ISIS couple which engaged in the terroristic killing spree. Today, the Department of Justice filed stating, quote, "The government has now successfully accessed the data stored on Farouk's iPhone and therefore no longer requires the assistance from Apple Incorporated, mandated by court's order compelling them to assist agents in the search." Who would have thunk we could have security without giving up our liberty? The Lone Star Lowdown is currently looking to fill some ad space. If you have a product or a service you'd like to advertise with us, feel free to give me a call at 210-363-2257. This is Rick Rohde with your Lowdown for March 28th, 2016.
Friends, good evening and welcome here on this Tuesday evening, the 29th of March, 2016, where spring has certainly sprung in this part of the country. I'm talking about Brooklyn, New York, and in any case, quite pleasant. And I hope it's pleasant where you are, too. My name is Tom Kiley, and we're going to start our show right now. The show is called INN World Report Radio, International News Net World Report. And we come to you live on Tuesday and Thursday nights here on the Great Logos Radio Network, where we endeavor to talk about issues of the day that are either not being spoken of in the venues where we have been led to believe they should be spoken of, or they are being spoken of poorly in those venues, like the mainstream media, like our academic system and so forth, or they're deliberately being obfuscated or lied about in those venues, like that. So that's why we here at INN and many, many others now around the world have rolled their sleeves up and gotten involved in creating media. We've called it the alternative media. I like to call it Alternative Media 2.0 because, there was for quite some time old school traditional alternative media on the right and the left. But with the advent of all this great new technology that allows us to do it for much cheaper, there's been an explosion of media being produced now around the world by people. And it's in the form of radio like this. It's in the form of television. It's in the form of video clips, documentaries, and people are writing articles, websites have started up and so forth. So in this way, we can sort of piece together all the missing links that we're not getting straightforward, at least from our corporate mainstream media. And to be sure, some of this information that we talk about is reported in the corporate media, but maybe it's buried in the back pages. Maybe it's, just only in some venues, and you really got to find it. So oftentimes, a lot of what we talk about, there is evidence of it here and there if you know where to look. But we've got plenty of sources, as you know, if you're a regular listener to the program, around the world that write, have their own shows, do research, write books, write articles, and so forth. So that's what we do. That's what INN World Report Radio is all about, and we've been doing it now for 8 years here in this venue. On the Logos Radio Network and the prior network to this one, from which Logos came forth. And even before that, INN got started here in New York City in the year 2001, just before 9/11, where our studios were situated exactly a half a mile north of Ground Zero in Tribeca, right off of Church Street. If you know anything about New York City, Church Street is the street that forms the eastern border of the World Trade Center. So if you came out the World Trade Center facing east and you turned left on Church Street and you walked about a half a mile north, you'd be right where INN studios were for many years. And we were on a television program that we produced, INN World Report, on the Free Speech TV network, on the DishNet satellite system. We did that for about 7 years as well. So that's a little bit of history. Once in a while, I like to go through it because maybe we've got some new listeners don't know that. And my good friend Joe Calhoun, who was there at INN and did a lot of work for us over the years and still does research, excellent researcher, he'll be joining us in about 20 minutes or so. But so in the meantime, the phone lines are open. So if you'd like, give me a ring, 512-646-1984. 512-646-1984. The phone lines are open. You can get right through. Anything you'd like to talk about. We are in very, very interesting times right now. There are major changes happening. And, to the extent I should say to which those changes are controlled or being controlled by the oligarchy that has a stranglehold on this country and numerous other ones. I can't say for sure, but there certainly seems to be a reaction to that oligarchic control around the world. And we saw it really get started in Greece with the advent of the group Syriza. Although that did not get very far and it was full of promise in the beginning, it's not necessarily surprising because Greece is a relatively small country in Europe, easy to put down. But then it kept going on. It started to happen in Spain with the advent of the group Podemos over there, which, as I understand it, was an offspring of the group Los Indignados, which I think means the indignant, which is a great name for a group nowadays, I would say, for sure. And it kept rolling. In England, Jeremy Corbyn, who was kind of like their equivalent of Bernie Sanders in Parliament, was voted to lead the Labour Party. Now, the Labour Party is, roughly speaking, the equivalent of our Democratic Party, Labour being, working people, supposed to be representing working people. And the Tories or the Conservatives are roughly equivalent to our Republican Party. And, typically speaking, the Conservatives are populated by members of the aristocracy or would-be members of the aristocracy, whereas the Labour Party is supposed to be populated by workers, union people, and that sort of thing. Well, they had their realignment, shall we say, like we did here in this country at about the same time when Tony Blair took over the party, much like Bill Clinton did in this country, took over the Democratic Party and started to bring it into the center, close to Wall Street, cozying up to Wall Street, doing Wall Street's bidding with NAFTA and things like that, and North American Free Trade Agreement, that sort of thing, and many other things, many other terrible things, I should say. The Clintons got this 3 strikes and you're out policy going, I believe, and as a result, a lot of African-American youth are in jail. But, started the war machine back up again in Serbia and so forth. So, similar kind of thing happened in England where the Labour Party, the Liberal Party, was taken over by Tony Blair. And basically now there's very little difference between the Tories and the Liberals over there, the Labour and the Conservatives, and like over here, very little difference between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. And people don't like it. So they voted Jeremy Corbyn in. And this guy rides his bicycle to the parliament, socialist, and, said he wanted a fair deal dealt out for the Palestinians and so forth. Well, both sides of the political spectrum in England came down on this guy, even members of his own party, and they've been pounding him. This is what's been happening, that these insurgencies around the world, like Syriza in Greece, like Jeremy Corbyn in England, are being met with very, very stiff resistance. The oligarchies, as far as they're concerned, they've put a lot of money into this project to control everything and make it look like you have a choice. And now, victory is being snatched, or defeat is being, victory is being snatched from the jaws of defeat, I should say. I think I have that metaphor sort of correct, but it's what I'm trying to do is when you almost have it, and then you start to lose it. That's what it looks like it's going on, and then it keeps going. It keeps going. In Portugal, the people are so angry with the austerity neoliberal program that they voted out the center-right party that's been running that country for a really long time. It's something that nobody thought would ever happen. The communists and the socialists, the only people they hate more than the conservatives are each other, right? And they got together to form a government. So then in Ireland just recently. Same thing. Center-right party being diminished greatly. Now in this country, I should say in France. Let's stay in Europe first. In France, the far right is riding this wave of indignation in the form of Marine Le Pen, daughter of Marie Le Pen, the National Front, I think, leader in France for many years. That's the ultra-conservative party. And over here in this country, Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders are sort of, although Bernie Sanders is much more of an insider than Donald Trump, politically speaking, those two people are riding the wave of the insurgency, the people trying to reclaim some sort of sovereignty through the system. So let's see if it's going to happen or not. Because I tell you what, if these movements are blunted like they were in Greece and so forth, I think it's just going to come back stronger. But and then let's see what happens, because this is what happens, friends, when you got nothing left, when you can't get your society straight through the ballot box, you can't get it straight through protest, what comes next? And interesting question. So that's what we like to talk about, and particularly right now. And that's why I say we are living in interesting times. People are waking up. People are going forward. What do you think? Do you think we will be able to straighten this out using the very political system that has been so badly corrupted now? It's an interesting question. Why don't you give me a call, 512-646-1984. What's your opinion? Can we straighten this thing out? FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, they said, saved capitalism during the Great Depression through the system. And I think the way that they did it was the oligarchy had to cough up a part of their piece of the pie, which is huge, and give a piece to the people, and just to convince them that they should stick with the system rather than try the new fangled thing that they were doing in Russia called communism. Well, the communists are gone, and it's all being taken back. All you rats out of the pool, we didn't give you the pool. We just let you play with it for a little while until the competition was gone. Now it's gone, and all y'all get out and get back in the gutter where you belong. That's what it seems to me to be happening. And, I grew up during this amazing era where the American middle class was really established and flourished, became the beacon to the entire world. I saw it. I lived through it. My father, a young GI returning from World War II. My mother grew up on a farm, the daughter of Italian immigrants, grew up speaking Italian and English bilingually, and hardworking people. She went on, first person in her family to go to college. She became a nurse, and then got a glamorous job in those days on Pan American Airways, flying into South and Central America. And she gave all that up to have myself and my other brothers and sisters and my father and mother work together. And I saw it happen. I saw them purchase houses. I saw it all happen. My neighbors, the children I grew up with. And it is a very, very different world today. Yeah, we have a lot of toys. We have a lot of smartphones and stuff. But never heard of such a thing as the kind of college debt situation that we got. But what do you think? 512-646-1984. Give me a ring. We'll be right back. Tom Kiley, INN, right after this.
You are listening to the Logos Radio Network. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
All right, good friends, welcome back. Tom Kiley here, INN World Report Radio. Now, I'm just kind of ruminating. I think that's the word I can use here in this situation where I'm talking about, where this country has come from in the relatively recent past. And where it's going is a really bad place. And it's not just this country. It is Western civilization, for lack of a better term, perhaps. Many of the countries of Europe, as well as the United States. I think it's a kind of a mixed picture in South and Central America. Some of those countries have actually made some progress because they've been through this. We're going through now. They were already in and out of this situation in the 90s and early aughts, I believe, maybe even in the 80s. We had the Iran-Contra situation and the war in Nicaragua. So in any case, nobody's calling, so I'm going to talk. But I wish somebody would give me a ring and give me a reality check on this, folks. The American people seem to have totally lost their way, have been totally neutered. Now, I could be wrong. Because, the reflection that we get of the American people is oftentimes distorted through the media and so forth. We have this venue here, but I don't know to what extent we can accurately gauge it. I can tell you this. There's a lot of anger out there, and it is shocking. It's not shocking to me, probably not shocking to you, the listeners, but it is shocking to the powers that be. At least that's what they say, If you watch, it's really funny to watch Fox News. It's like all they can say is angry voters. It's like they don't understand what everybody's complaining about, and their finger pointing as far as what is to blame in this situation is a lot of phony baloney. They're still very, very much in the right-left paradigm. So all they can do is say it's the other side's fault, not ours. We have these great ideas. But, from the right came that great idea of trickle-down economics during Ronald Reagan's administration, which started this great reversal of the American middle class. The rich people didn't have enough money. The oligarchs didn't have enough money. We got to change the tax structure, let them have more money, because when they have more money, they'll invest it in factories and we'll all have jobs and we'll all benefit. Well, that's exactly what happened. They got more money. The tax code was drastically changed, and they took their money and did exactly what they said they would do. They made factories. Unfortunately, those factories were in China and not here. So we did not benefit from that. And now we have a situation where the upper 1.01%, 1/10 of 1% are fantastically wealthy. I don't know, maybe a half, a third at least of the entire wealth in this country in the hands of 1/10 of 1%. And, I know I don't have anything against making a lot of money as long as it was made ethically, as long as it was, made in a way that benefits society and not hurts it. And particularly, what are you going to do with it when you get it? I don't think you should have it if you're going to do bad things with it, if you're going to hurt people with it, if you're going to hurt countries with it. All right? That's my opinion. And guess what? I think this goes to the very question of what does society mean? What does society mean? I always thought society meant in the activities of our lives which intersect with other people, all right? Not the stuff that we do in isolation, on our own, or just with our families, which is a small society in and of itself, isn't it? But where we intersect with each other, okay? Where we've built structures, complex structures, which enable us to not focus on the essentials of survival every day, because there's enough of us working together in concert in community where some people could focus on some aspects of survival while other people can focus on other aspects of survival in a way that's so successful that they achieve more than what they and their family need, and they create a surplus which can then be used by others of us who are not focused on growing food, for instance. And in exchange, we could focus on things that they might want to focus on to our surplus and to their benefit. That's, I think, what society should be, right? Where, where we work together for our mutual benefit. I travel through Luxembourg, small country between Switzerland and Austria for the most part, maybe for the entire part. I'd have to go back to the map. You may have some other countries touching it, but basically a nice small country between Switzerland and Austria. Now, I love Switzerland anyway. It's a very, very beautiful place. And they have quite an interesting society. They do really care about each other. And by the way, next time you have one of these idiots try to tell you that, guns are the problem, you can tell them that in Switzerland, every household with an adult male, probably up to the age of 60 or so, has an automatic weapon in the house, in the gun locker. submachine gun in Switzerland. And if there are more than one adult males in the house between, 18 and whatever, there would be more than one of these weapons in the house. All right? The very weapons that they have banned here, everybody's got one. Every male has one in Switzerland. And you don't see them shooting each other up, do you? Right. So where's this theory about guns are the problem? All right, that's another, just as an interesting aspect about the Swiss and their society. Okay, and the reason they have that is because they are a small country, they're a neutral country, and once you've come of age, you get your military training. I guess you're on active duty for a year or two, and then after that, you're in the ready reserves, the militia that the Constitution, the forefathers, the founding fathers, the framers, so eloquently spoke of. And I'm talking about that because I started talking about Luxembourg. Liechtenstein, I meant to say, is the country I'm talking about between Switzerland and Austria. Very similar to Luxembourg in some respects. However, it's a beautiful country. It's a small country. You can visit. You just drive right up to the capital, get out and start walking around. It's like a little hometown. Vaduz is the name of the capital. And I learned while I was there that if you're a foreigner who would like to emigrate to this country, now immigration is a big story in the news right now. Well, in Liechtenstein, the way they do it is, you pick the county that you want to live in, and then you got to go talk to the people who live there and introduce yourself and explain that you'd like to live among them and join their community and join their society. And I expect you better have a good reason to want to do it. And I expect you better be in a position to make a valuable contribution to that community, to that society. And then they vote on you, whether or not you should be allowed to join their society. How do you like that? How do you like that? That's the way other people do it. Because they take society seriously. We don't take society seriously anymore, if we ever did. I mean, I think we did in the 30s. People worked hard. But now we're a bunch of babies, just accepting whatever comes down on our head from on high. No, this is a democratically based society, supposedly, that we live in. We're supposed to decide. And what has our society become? It has become an engine to make a tiny fraction fabulously wealthy by impoverishing not just many other peoples and countries around the world, but now right here in the United States as well. And so what? Who cares? Shut up. Who would vote for this, friends? Who would agree to this? How did this happen? And why aren't there more angry voters out there? What are people doing? What are your friends doing? Looking at you, I guess the politicians won't let us do it. No, the politicians are supposed to work for you. And you all been bought off with this right-left phony baloney stuff, single-issue voting. I can't talk to anybody on the other side because of my particular issue that they disagree with me on. No. That's not what government is. That's not what society is. That's not what governing is. It is the art of compromise, which we have absolutely zero of anymore. And that seems to be okay with everybody. Stasis. No, government is the art of compromise. You can't get what you want every single time. You have to learn to horse trade. Anyway, Tom Kiley, INM, was supposed to be joined by my friend Joe Cal.
The Chicago Marathon is no tiptoe through the tulips, but a pregnant woman overdue with her second child ran the whole race before going into labor. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, back with the amazing story of the marathon mom next.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This message is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
Amber Miller, a 27-year-old mom from suburban Chicago, gives new meaning to the word endurance. Miller was pregnant and 3 weeks overdue at the start of the city's marathon. She'd run 7 times before, including once while pregnant with her first child, so she figured, what the heck, and planned to run only half the course. But when she got started, she just kept going, finishing the entire 26 miles in just over 6 hours. Then at the finish line, she had a more urgent race to run to the hospital, where she gave birth to a healthy 7-pound baby girl. Phew, I bet that was a relief. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht for StartPage.com, the world's most private search engine.
You're listening to the Logos Radio Network at logosradionetwork.com.
All right, good friends. Welcome back. Tom Kiley, INN World Report Radio. Now, let's continue. I didn't get any callers in that first half hour. Okay. I suppose it's okay this time, but I want that to change. Meanwhile, my good friend Joe Calhoun is on the line. Listen to what we're talking about, because I think we'll have, at a certain point, we'll open the phone lines back up again. They're going to be turned off right now, but we'll talk for a bit, and then we'll have you back in. So I hope you join us again. Right now, I'd like to welcome from the Continental Divide, high up in the Rocky Mountains, my good friend and INN cohort throughout the time of INN. And in any case, Joe Calhoun. Hey, Joe, are you there?
Yeah.
Welcome to INN. Thanks for coming on tonight. And Joe, a lot of stuff going on. You and I are about the same age. Did you ever think you would be at this point in your life, at this age in your life, where all the great gains that were made by this country here domestically, at least, and of course it wasn't for everybody yet, we know that, but the hope was there, at least the momentum had been established, but that it would be going backwards so far and so fast in such a short time?
Well, in the 60s, I guess, there was a lot of hope, post-war baby boomers, getting good jobs, having two cars, and a two-story house. But now the millennials, they're living with their parents. They can't even get a house.
Well, Joe, I was kind of talking about something before that, even before the baby boomers. I guess we're sort of at the tail end of that baby boom thing, for sure. You had the parents of the baby boomers, the usually the men who fought in the Second World War returning home, and the women who, for the most part, remained here in the States, many of whom went to work in factories and armaments industries and so forth. You had those people coming back, and that was where the real change started to happen. That was a generation that was the first great wave of college-educated people, the first great wave of homeowners and so forth, right? And, of course, they had children, the baby boomers, of which you and I are part of, and then you were talking about the baby. But for me, the real miracle started before the baby boomers. It was the parents of the baby boomers.
Well, the parents of the baby boomers went through the Great Depression. And during the Great Depression, which was instigated by the banks, I think my last figure is that approximately there were 7 million Americans who starved to death. So I don't see that as a really great time,
Well, I guess I'll have to be more clear then. I don't know about you, but my parents were children during the Great Depression. Their parents weathered that storm and guided them through that. Actually, on both sides of my family, on my father's side, his father was a police officer. So, you always need cops, especially during Depression. So I guess they had a job. On my mother's side, they were farmers. So they were growing their own food and enough left over for other people. So I guess they were okay through the Great Depression. But they went through the Great Depression as children. I learned a lot about it from them. But then when they became adults and the Depression was over because of the war production during World War II and so forth, they didn't go back to the Depression. They didn't go back to, non-home ownership and so forth. They went forward into what we call the middle class. That's actually where I feel a lot of the change happened. Yes, of course, there was no real middle class during the Depression. It came subsequently at the end of World War II, no?
Yes, you're right. But my parents were married during the Depression, and my dad he went into business himself making ties. So he was a door-to-door salesman selling ties, and he said, my grandparents worked with him, living in the same house, making these ties. And that's how they kept off the soup line, the bread lines. So the Depression was quite a trial, at least with my parents, and prior to the war economy.
Well, so we have a little bit of a difference in that my parents weren't married until the early 1950s. So there is a difference there for sure. But they were children, like I said, during the Depression. So, they came up through it. Certainly my grandparents had a lot of stories for me and warnings about bankers and the stock market and everything else. So, I guess our experience is a little different. My parents came out of, my father was a GI during World War II. He came back and met my mom. And, that's when the real thing started to take off for real people, for regular people. I lived on Long Island, Levittown, New York, right down the road. Just row after row after row of houses being built, like the tents that they were in while they were in the service. This was just an incredible explosion of economic activity.
Well, I didn't live during the Depression. I was born in 1949, so it's like I didn't experience that, but I heard stories about it, and from my parents and everything else. Of course, we lived, and I grew up. If you watched the series called Father Knows Best or Leave It to Beaver, that's the neighborhood I grew up in.
Right, and that's supporting what I'm saying. That was the 1950s. Mm-hmm. Not the Depression, not the 30s, not the 40s, but when it really started.
Go through a lot of mental trauma, though, because the specter of the atomic bomb was always over our heads. We always had these drills in school, duck and cover, and people were finding out the best place in their house to build a fallout shelter and things like that. So there was there was that Cold War mentality that was going on, and it was pretty intense in the late 50s and early 60s.
Yes, absolutely. And however, I think it was part and parcel of the creation of the American middle class. I think they happened together and for similar reasons. This was to so-called fight communism. You know better than most people, Joe. The communists never had any intention. The Russians never had any intention of invading the United States whatsoever. Now, whether or not we had intentions of bombing them, that's another story. Dr. Strangelove and so forth was a sort of a farce about that, but I think there was a lot of truth behind it. And at the same time, the creation of the American middle class was a big psychological operation, if you ask me, to gin the population up against communism. And then to convince them, once they finally had a little piece of the pie, which there never was a middle class in this country before, once they had a little something, then the boogeyman was going to take it from you and take it away because they hated your freedom and they hated your prosperity. So if you ask me, I think the creation of the middle class and the duck and cover, the Red Scare were of a piece.
Yeah, and this all happened after Truman came in. After the death of Roosevelt and Truman came in.
Exactly. When I said right after World War II, Truman came in at the very end there. And this is when it all happened. That's when my father came home from the Army and went back to, he had dropped out of high school, and he came back, he got his high school education and then, got working, got a good job, and then went to college for 9 years at night and got a degree in electrical engineering. All while, married to my mom and having us and, all that sort of thing, working full time. But that was opportunity writ large, I thought. And I always say, Joe, I'm always cautious to say, no, it wasn't for everybody yet, but it was a start, and it was growing, and it was expanding. There was African Americans being left behind, but you got to start somewhere, right?
Oh yeah. In fact, actually, during the 30s, when my father married my mother, and this is in the 30s, after the Red Scare and the trial of Sacco and Vanzetti, actually. The marriage was both a mixed marriage religiously because my father was an Irish Protestant, Scotch-Irish Protestant.
Well, you know what? We only have 10 seconds. Hold it right there, Joe. We'll continue. We're speaking with Joe Calhoun, and we're reminiscing about what this country was.
Easy.
All right, good friends. Rocksteady, a couple old timers here, a couple of timers reminiscing about where this country came from to get to the mess that it's in. I'm talking with my good friend Joe Calhoun, and believe me, we're heading toward current events, believe it or not. But I just wanted to try to establish some background because I know a lot of you out there are a lot younger than I am. I'm in my 60s now, and I've seen a lot, and so is Joe. All right, and we're trying to give you a little context. Joe, I never, I've seen economic downturns here and there. I've lived through them. I've had to deal with them. But this is ridiculous. This has been going on now since 2008, right? This is in its 8th year. Kind of thing, when I grew up, this kind of thing was not acceptable. This was not acceptable. Okay, well, you had ups and downs, but steady, permanent.
I can't believe the number of young people that are just accepting the fact that they're going to be living with their parents for the rest of their lives. It's unimaginable for me, that a lot of them are just staying home.
Well, this kind of goes to what I was trying to say before you came on. So the American population has been neutered, okay? It's been emasculated. It's been dumbed down. I don't understand why people are just accepting this. Maybe they're not. I don't know. Maybe there's revolts going on all over the place, and I just don't know about it. But what happened? What did they put something in the food? I mean, what the hell's going on? Is this what chemtrails is all about? I don't understand.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm flabbergasted.
Fluoridation? I don't know.
I sometimes talk to people like, I have to remember that I was born in the first half of the last century,
Well, you were born at the very end of the first half. I was born at the very beginning of the second half,
Exactly. And I sometimes talk to people like they know what I'm talking about, and they don't.
That's right. And that's why I'm trying to do this sort of, context setting here. Go ahead.
Yeah, and it's all these things. Now we have the leading. I mean, you have all these Southern established black voters praising what we would consider, 40 years ago as a Dixiecrat by the name of Hillary Clinton. She would be considered, by the standards of the 60s, as a Dixiecrat. Brought up in Arkansas, formerly worked for was a Republican.
I think she was brought up in Chicago, but as an adult, she got her political upbringing perhaps in Arkansas.
Well, yeah, she got a political upbringing in Arkansas with her husband, Bill Clinton.
Right.
And, I'm amazed that she will be ushered into the White House primarily, if the statistics are right, by the black vote in this country. Yeah. And this is a woman who ushered in the recolonization of Africa. She ushered in the recolonization of Africa by the United States and Europe. When I grew up, they had a map of Africa, and it had all these different colors on it because there was the Belgium Congo, French West Africa, and all these other things. And then Africa slowly in the 60s with Colonel Gaddafi, with Nelson Mandela, with Zimbabwe.
Was it Robert Mugabe?
Robert Mugabe got decolonized, And now this woman who ushered in this Arab Spring, which I call the African Holocaust, is being spirited into the White House, almost unimposed by the media. And she's a Dixiecrat. What we would call a Dixiecrat in the 60s.
I was speaking to that before you came on, that the right and the left has been co-opted, not only here, but everywhere else in the Western Europe and North America, it looks like, right? Well, you look at the Labour Party in England, it's the same thing as what Clinton did, Yeah,
we're not talking about liberals. We're talking about people that we used to, associate with. And this is quite recent, over the last, I would say half a decade to the last year.
The liberals have lost their minds. For the most part, there's really the true liberals are still left, and we know who they are, But
but I mean, the liberals, they had that Phil Oakes song in the 60s about "Love Me, Love Me, I'm a Liberal." But I always associated myself with more or less the the far left, the anti-war movement and all this other stuff. But now these people that I used to associate myself are pro-war, pro-Hillary, and they're basically having all their attention diverted from Hillary Clinton to the alleged crimes or attitudes or positions of Donald Trump.
Well, I'll say one thing before we move on to Donald Trump, who is the personification of this backlash that's happening here in this country. It's happening around Western Europe and the United States, even in Eastern Europe now. But I'll say this, that I wouldn't – what we've been calling the pro-war left is no, they're still against war if it's George Bush running the war. You know what I mean? It's not even like it's weird. It's like it's like a cult of personality or something. Barack Obama, first African American president. Okay, let's stop being against war because it's one of our guys in there. And the anti-war movement stops dead in its tracks. And now they want to have another 8 years of a no anti-war movement because it's going to be a woman president for the first time. So it's not even. I don't know if George Bush ran for and got a third term, became president again, wanted to take us to war in some other place. Do you think they would turn around then, or do you think it's been a permanent lobotomy when it comes to being anti-war?
Oh, I think it's a permanent lobotomy. And I tell you, I was going to have a panel at the Left Forum. I'm kind of relieved. I was going to, start making my proposal and everything. And I found out that yesterday was the deadline for your proposals. And I'm telling you, to me, it's not worth it because the conference is going to be dominated by George Soros. By all these George Soros. George Soros was a Nazi collaborator during World War II. He's behind MoveOn.org. He's the chief financer of Hillary Clinton's campaign. He's behind at least the New York faction, or the East Coast faction of Black Lives Matter. And just today, they ran an ad a few days ago soliciting Trump protesters for $15 an hour to work for $15 an hour today at a Trump rally to protest a Trump rally. And
wow, do you have that ad?
Yes.
Email it to me. I want to see it. I'd like to see it.
I can read it to you.
Yeah. Let's go. Go ahead.
Okay, well, here it is.
All right.
Temporary paid positions to protest Donald Trump. And this is today, just a few hours ago. The rally was. And this was put on Craigslist, which Craigslist actually deleted it because of its content. We are seeking people to protest Donald Trump rally in Janesville, Wisconsin. We are willing to pay $15 an hour for a maximum of 4 hours for this service. We are offering this amount because of the current income inequality that we are fighting in America today. There will be a pre-rally point at 3300 West Tripp Road, Janesville, Wisconsin. And so these protesters that you see at Donald Trump are not genuinely coming out for Trump. They're coming out because they're getting paid.
Well, this is the standard color revolution model, isn't it? I mean, isn't this what they did in Iran in 1953? Rent the crowds, right? AstroTurf.
Rent a crowds.
Yeah.
And this is rent a mob. I mean, the protest in Tucson, Arizona, where they were trying to, drive home the idea that Trump is a Mussolini fascist or Hitler fascist, they decided it was a real cool idea to dress up like Klansmen. There was one young girl that was dressed up in a hooded Ku Klux Klan uniform, and they upset black Trump supporters. And they were being ushered out, and one black Trump supporter actually assaulted her boyfriend. But
who had a hood on his head?
He didn't have the hood on his head. It was his girlfriend that had the hood on his head.
I thought I saw the picture. Looked like he had it.
He was taunting the Trump people there.
Yeah. This is amazing to me because, to my knowledge, Donald Trump has never killed anybody. Yet Hillary Clinton's responsible for the deaths of how many? Tens of thousands? Hundreds of thousands? Easily.
Tens of thousands.
And if you want to start talking about Syria, which she was a big proponent of, what do they got? 250,000, 300,000 Syrians? Dead
yes, that's what was her speech at AIPAC about.
Yeah.
Just before she went to AIPAC, she was talking to Israel. She made a speech. She suggested to Israel that we have to first throw the best survival. I can't remember how she worded it because I don't have it right up here. But the best survival of the state of Israel is to overthrow Assad, is to go to war with Syria.
And that's not even an original thought of hers. She's just being told what to do. That's what the Annan plan. They've been talking about doing that in Israel for a long time, right? She's like, "What do you need me to say, boss? What do you want me to do, boss?
And so they had a number of protests at the AIPAC meeting just a week ago or a week and a half ago.
Yeah, you know what, though, Joe? We only have about 20 seconds, and I know this is going to be a bit of a story, so why don't we hold it right there? All right, friends, we've got another hour of program left. We're talking with our good friend Joe Calhoun, and, now we're back into current events, talking about the election. We'll be right back with Joe just after this.
Here's to
All right, good friends, welcome back. Tom Kiley, INN World Report Radio, hour number 2 here on our Tuesday night show, and we'll be back on Thursday night as well, Tuesdays and Thursdays here on the great Logos Radio Network, where, by the way, we are in the midst of a fundraiser, so I would really appreciate it if you stop by logosradionetwork.com, take a look, maybe you can kick something into the kitty, be greatly appreciated. There's usually lots of vendors that step up to the plate and offer deals and stuff during fundraisers and so forth for the network. So if you could find it in your hearts to do that, that would be great. I can tell you the money collected goes to just, paying the bills, keeping the lights on, paying for servers and things like that. It does not go into the pockets of any of the hosts on the network. We all contribute our time to this effort. So we would like to see if you could consider going by and maybe contributing a little bit of money to keep this effort going. It's a great effort. It's a noble effort. Our esteemed producer, Deborah Stevens, works, I'm not going to say 24/7, but the next best thing. She does sleep sometimes, but she works tirelessly to bring this program to you. She's a great, great unsung heroine of this network and of Austin, Texas, if you ask me. And so if you can, logosradionetwork.com, just go by, take a look, and see if you can kick in. That would be great. All right, now back to my good friend Joe Calhoun. Joe, before the break, we sort of came a long way. We sort of established the progress that had been made on some fronts, not all fronts, in this country. Coming out of the Great Depression, coming out of World War II, and now how it's all being eroded, taken back, and people seem to have lost their brains. The civil rights movement, the anti-war movement. It's just going crazy, and it's manifesting in unbelievable ways by, as you pointed out, talking about people like Hillary Clinton as if she's some great shakes or something, rather than you talk about fascists. They call Donald Trump a fascist. This is, we've got fascism already, if you ask me. We've got
New World Order fascism. She has her death squads in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Then they're real Nazis. I mean, they're not, figurative Nazis. They're real Nazis with swastikas.
And, of course, you're talking about Victoria Nuland. Did Hillary have anything to do with putting Victoria Nuland in there on the ground, boots on the ground?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Robert Kagan, right now, he wrote a letter, in opposition to Trump's foreign policy, along with a number of leading
neoconservatives, Ziocons.
And then you have Lindsey Graham. Both Lindsey Graham and Robert Kagan said that they would support Cruz versus Trump because Cruz would lose the election, and they're much more comfortable working with Hillary Clinton.
They're bud.
And that's Robert Kagan.
Yeah.
Victoria Nuland's husband.
Well, Hillary Clinton was his wife, Victoria Nuland's boss, right? So
right.
I guess they're pretty comfortable with each other already.
Victoria Nuland was a Clinton appointee in the State Department.
Right, and before that, I believe she was an official in the Bush administration, wasn't she?
It's yes, and this is I'm almost breathless. This is Hillary Clinton.
Yep.
And people. I just saw a congresswoman, a black congresswoman from Wisconsin, saying, "Well, she said she has all the love for Bernie, but Hillary has the best foreign policy. She's seasoned. She's this. She's that. She has the best experience. So she's going to be one of the super delegates for Hillary Clinton." And I'm going, "You're out of your mind."
Yeah, the people don't. They've been lobotomized. People can't even think anymore, it seems. By the way, Victoria Nuland and friends. When Joe talks about Victoria Nuland, I'm sure if you're a regular listener to this network and this show, you know who she is. She was the Ziocon who spearheaded the destabilization of the Ukraine and the so-called soft power coup d'etat that was engineered there by the United States. She was the tip of the spear. She was there handing out cookies. And, and she was caught.
To real Nazis. We're not talking about,
this is not an exaggeration.
Neo-Nazis. Yep. We're talking about real Nazis.
Real Nazis. If you've listened to the show for any length of time, you know. Yeah, these are the Nazis who fought. These are the local Ukrainian Nazis who fought together with the actual Nazis when they invaded in 1940. What was it, 41? Was Barbarossa 41 or 40, Joe?
Barbarossa was, I think, 40.
40.
Well, wait a minute. No. It was 41.
It was May 41 or something, or June 41, right?
Yeah, June 41. They actually got a late start in the summer. Yeah. They were going to do it. They got a late start in the summer, so they got frozen out in part by the Russian winter. but also by I don't know how many what do they call them, units of the Siberian fighting force that Stalin took away from the east of Siberia because they fought against the Germans and totally routed the Germans. The day of the attack was December 6th, when the Russians began the offensive against the Nazis who were at the gates of Moscow. And it was the next day that the United States declared war on Germany and Japan. You had Pearl Harbor.
No, you're wrong. So, no. The United States declared war on Japan. It did not declare war on Germany. It was not allowed to declare war on Germany. Wall Street would not allow the President of the United States at that time to declare war on its pet, Adolf Hitler. It was about 5 days or so later that Adolf Hitler declared war on the United States. Then, reciprocally...
Thank you for the correction. I know that.
Yes.
It was a godsend to Roosevelt that Hitler declared war on the United States.
Right.
Because Americans did not want to declare war on Germany.
Roosevelt did, but Wall Street wouldn't let him.
Yes.
Well, Roosevelt was chomping at the bit to get into the European theater, but Wall Street would not let that happen because of all the money that was made.
1941.
Yeah.
Because first you had the Battle of Britain, and after Hitler bombed Britain, then he turned his attention to Russia.
Well, he didn't even want to do that. You know, the Germans wanted to make peace with the British so they could focus entirely on Russia, right?
That's
and they even offered
parachuted into England.
That was what's his name? Rudolf Hess.
Rudolf Hess.
Yeah. And the Germans were very upset. They said, you know, what's the problem? You know, we're the white master race together, and he actually, Hitler supposedly admired the British Empire for their ability to conquer people all around the world, and he even offered German troops to, you know, support their empire around the world if they just could make peace, so that he could go focus entirely on Russia. And,
and
the British
had a liaison with the King of England, with Hitler, who had to abdicate.
Right. That's probably the real reason why Edward, the King of England, had to abdicate. Not because he married Wallace Simpson, the divorcee, but because Wallace Simpson and Edward were enamored with Adolf Hitler. In fact, von Ribbentrop, I'm told, the German foreign minister, I think he served as an ambassador in London for a while between the wars, was said to have sent carnations every week, flowers, to this Wallace Simpson woman who ended up becoming the wife of the then King Edward, you know, subsequently called off the throne. Now, the reason we're talking about this, friends, we mentioned Victoria Nuland, the neocon Victoria Nuland, who was, you ready for this, Joe? Drum roll, please. The U.S. ambassador to NATO under George W. Bush. Okay, so that ought to tell you a lot. And she was, I believe, working for Hillary Clinton in the State Department, ambassador at large in Eastern Europe, and helped facilitate
if I'm correct, I think she was, her actual title was Assistant Secretary of State.
Maybe I thought you were just coming out without portfolio or at large. But in any case, all right. Well, Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's what she still is.
And so this letter condemning Trump for his foreign policy, because he's not going to be aggressive enough, he's going to be an isolationist, was signed by, you might recognize these names: Michael Chertoff, Robert Kagan, Michael B. Mukasey, Daniel Pipes.
These are all the Ziocons.
Yes.
And on this subject well, Joe, I say Ziocons because, you know, everyone calls them neocons, but I don't know of a single neocon who is not also an ardent Zionist. I don't think you can be in that club unless you swear an oath to Israel. And friends, this is not anti-Semitic. I'm just talking about the way it works. And if they don't like me talking about it, then why are you doing it? I mean, it's the truth. The truth.
And Hillary Clinton is a Dixiecrat Ziocon. She's the one that addressed AIPAC, and according to the tweets, she was protested by a number of people there, but there were most of the protesters there, or a good chunk of them at AIPAC, were financed by George Soros or aligned with George Soros, so they didn't even say one word about Hillary Clinton's appearance there. They only talked about Donald Trump's. And what did Donald Trump do? He talked about the abolishment of NATO.
At AIPAC?
It was either at...
I think it was right before AIPAC.
Or shortly before, with his meetings with the Washington Post editorial board and the New York Times.
Friends,
he talked about the abolishment of NATO.
Listeners, this is yet another bombshell being dropped by Donald Trump. This man, because he is not under control, is saying what he feels and what he believes. And what you feel and what you believe, you're not allowed to say when you're under control. In fact, you're probably not even allowed to think it. But one thing after the other, weapons of mass destruction was a lie. The Bush administration knew it. What Putin is doing in Syria is good. I never wanted to see us go into Iraq. I never wanted to see us go into Libya. I never wanted to see us go into Syria. I could work with Vladimir. All of this stuff is bombshell after bombshell after bombshell. And now he says we ought to get rid of NATO. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. NATO was created to fight the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union's been gone for almost 30 years now.
And he also just today attacked the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. All right, hold on. We're going to take a break. We're talking with our friend Joe Calhoun. Joe, let's open up the phone lines when we get back. What do you say?
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure.
All right, friends, if any of this is stimulating a phone call from you, now's the time to do it. Phone lines are going to be open when we come back. Tom Kiley, INN, with our friend Joe Calhoun right after this.
This is the Logos Radio Network.
All right, good friends, welcome back. Tom Kiley, INN War Report Radio. We're speaking with our good friend Joe Calhoun. The phone lines are open. What do you think? Are we talking smack here or what? Okay. Or is it interesting? Or is it thought-provoking? Or have you not thought of some of this stuff before? Or have you thought of this all along and you've been frustrated because nobody else is talking about it? Now's your chance. 512-646-1984. For the balance of the 45 minutes left of this program, 40 minutes, the phone lines are open. I want to hear all y'all calling in. That would be great. All right. Do you hear this on other radio programs? I don't know. You know, I'm starting to listen to talk radio here in New York again, conservative talk radio, and I'm shocked at how supportive they are of Donald Trump. And do not mistake yourselves, friends. My good friend Joe Calhoun is about as far left as you can get. If you go any further, you start coming back around on the other side. And Joe, but he's a true leftist. He is a dedicated person toward peace in the world, okay, and economic justice. I know that. I know the man. Joe, you also told me about another famous liberal here in New York who came out against Hillary Clinton. Why don't you tell us about that?
Susan Sarandon was on Chris Hayes last night, and so she made a strong case for Bernie Sanders. Mm-hmm. And then Chris Hayes asked her, well, if he loses the nomination and Hillary is the nominee, will you support Hillary Clinton? And Susan Sarandon basically said no. I don't know if I can use the word, but a definitely strong no. And so Chris Hayes asked the follow-up question, well, you won't vote for Trump, or you can't say. And she said, yes, I could vote for Trump. And she kind of framed it in kind of a left tent, saying that Trump would bring on a revolution in American politics.
Exactly. Of course he would, but not the kind of revolution I suspect that Susan has in mind. He's going to start cleaning house. Well, not the type that she framed her argument with, because I'm sure she's thinking along the same lines we have. The same with Medea Benjamin during one of the debates. Donald Trump. Medea Benjamin, the head of Code Pink, the anti-war female anti-war group. And when Trump came out against all these warmongers during the Republican debate, Medea Benjamin said she's laughing because she can't believe that Trump's saying this. And she had at the end of one of her tweets, "Go Trump." Yeah. Ralph Nader is another one that hasn't endorsed Trump, but Trump has caught his ear. Yeah. The same with Louis Farrakhan, has caught his ear. No endorsement, but it's caught his ear. And then you have James Webb, who ran as a presidential candidate for the Democratic Party. When he was asked the same question, and he's a Sanders supporter, he was asked the same question, are you going to support Hillary Clinton if she gets the nominee? And he said no. He said, I might vote for Donald Trump. And then there's the urban legend, because it's kind of interesting, Barack Obama hasn't really chimed into a lot of this political controversy about Trump and this and that and, all these other things. The urban legend on the Internet is that Barack Obama might be a closet Trump supporter himself. Well, I would fully expect Barack Obama to come out and roundly support Hillary Clinton when the time comes. However, he hasn't. No, but I don't think the time is right for that to happen yet. While it's still a race between her and Bernie Sanders. However, at the same time, whatever he says publicly, he could be a closet Trump supporter because he didn't want us to go into Syria, and neither did Trump. That's right. And, I got to tell everybody, Barack Obama has been an incredible disappointment. I voted for him the first time. I didn't vote for any of them the second time. All right. And he's been a lout on so many issues, mainly because he just caved in. If he ever had a spine to begin with, I don't know. However, at least on one issue, he deserves great credit. And that is he stood up to the neocon, Ziocon war machine and said no to Syria. Even when they made the phony baloney poison gas attack. Right, he withstood that too, and he deserves a great deal of credit for that. What do you think, Joe?
Yes, I do. He does. It's his second term. His second term when urban legend goes, and I think this is true, that he got rid of Petraeus, he got rid of Hillary Clinton. Unfortunately, the person to fit the shoes of Hillary Clinton was John Kerry, but then he actually won over finally John Kerry, even though John Kerry was still pushing him to go to war against Syria.
Another bonesman, another skull and bonesman.
Skull and bones. He pulled the rug out of his own Secretary of State. And even Andrea Mitchell, a strong opponent in the mainstream media on Trump, talks about how Barack Obama totally blew it on Syria because he didn't follow his Secretary of State, John Kerry.
Well, she's a Ziocon, isn't she? Andrea Mitchell?
Oh.
Married to Alan Greenspan of the Federal Reserve?
Yeah. And I mean, she is adamant against Donald Trump. She's one of the leading. I don't think Donald Trump does any interviews with her or Rachel Maddow, for that matter.
It's so funny to watch these people because they've been trying to shape American public opinion for so long. And apparently they've met with a fair amount of success. But there is an insurgency. There's a revolution going on. Democrats, Susan Sarandon might vote for Donald Trump, for crying out loud. Democrats in droves are switching over to vote for Donald Trump. I know personally here in New York State, Democrats, lifelong, never were registered to any other party, are switching registration so they can vote for Donald Trump in the upcoming New York primary. Okay? And it's happening all over the country.
I might be voting for Donald Trump, and I can't believe I am doing that.
Well, I will vote for him if I would vote for him if the election were held today. Now, between now and the election, he could really turn me off, but he's trying to. He's working hard at it sometimes, it seems.
Well,
but,
8 months ago, I would never believe I would be saying this. This would be, I'd have to be in a parallel universe where everything was upside down.
Mm-hmm.
But
and friend, you're listening to a couple of dyed-in-the-wool lefties here. I'm telling you, but we're the real deal. See, we're not the part of the pro-war left. All right, we're not the people who are sitting on their hands because one of ours is in. We're not the people sitting on our hands because we may have the first female president and she's one of ours. No. None of that. This is the real deal you're listening to here. 512-646-1984. How does it sound? Give us a call. Come on. What are you afraid of? Joe, you going to bite anybody if they call?
Well, and we should have some pretty good listeners, But
we have great listeners, TV. But I what are they, dumbstruck? Come on, guys. And gals, ladies, what do you think? First woman president? Do you want that to be this Hillary Clinton person? I don't think so. I'd rather have Tulsi Gabbard, Democratic Congresswoman from Hawaii. Or even what's her name? Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Well, almost,
she's not great on foreign policy, but she's great on domestic issues, like Bernie Sanders.
Great on domestic issues, but I really have issues with her on foreign policy.
I understand, but if it was between her and Hillary, it would be a no-brainer.
With Bernie Sanders on foreign policy.
Yeah, that's true. Very, very, very true.
Strangely, I don't have very many major issues with Donald Trump on foreign policy at all.
Yeah, well, he's talking smack about Iran and certain other things too. But who knows? He's also kind of indicated, what he says to get elected is not necessarily what's going to happen. Which they all practice that one. And by the way, as an aside, you mentioned John Kerry, member of Skull and Bones. That article you sent me the other day. Did you see the part of that article where it said the Bush family and the Wall Streeters, like the Allen Dulles and the Dulles brothers, were so tight with the Nazis, right? And all these blue bloods that went through Yale and Skull and Bones that were so tight with the Nazis, supposedly they inspired the National Socialists SS, the famous SS, to put the Skull and Bones as one of their insignias on their uniforms. Did you see that?
I didn't see that particular part, but it's kind of like, how about that?
How about that? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, but supposedly, Prescott Bush and Alan Dulles and that whole crowd, they were so enamored by the Nazis, were so enamored by them that they adopted Skull and Bones for their SS uniforms.
Skull and Bones.
All right, hold on. We'll be right back with Joe just after this.
Are you having guilty thoughts? They could land you in jail. Neuroforensic brain scans are being used to prove guilt in India, and they could be coming to a courtroom near you. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and I'll tell you more in just a moment.
Your search engine is watching you, recording all your searches and creating a massive database of your personal information. That's creepy, but it doesn't have to be that way. Startpage.com is the world's most private search engine. Startpage doesn't store your IP address, make a record of your searches, or use tracking cookies, and they're third-party certified. If you don't like Big Brother spying on you, start over with Startpage. Great search results and total privacy. Startpage.com, the world's most private search engine.
If you're charged with murder in India, you could confess without saying a word. Their courts use brainwave technology to read defendants' minds and place them at the scene of the crime. The accused is fitted with a wired cap hooked to an EEG machine. Investigators then read statements about the crime and document the defendant's brain response. They claim the system is foolproof since it measures electrical activity sparked by knowledge in the brain. While the U.S. does not yet allow brainwave evidence, experts predict it's just a matter of time. Defense attorneys are petitioning for its use in American courts to exonerate convicted criminals. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht. More news and information at CatherineAlbrecht.com.
Live Free Speech Radio, LogosRadioNetwork.com.
Something wrong! Man, I smell something wrong. Something's wrong! I don't think I'll be around here long.
Junior Watson, that's why we play his song. Something's wrong with this country and probably with Europe, NATO, the New World Order, the whole nine yards. And that's what we're talking about with our good friend Joe Calhoun. We're ruminating about this crazy time. I started the show off by saying we're in a fascinating time. There's an insurgency. People are rising up to try to take it all back. And let's see if it happens, if it'll be allowed to happen. They want to take your guns away real bad. I'm not a gun person. I know how to strip down an M16. I had to learn how to do all that stuff. Okay. I don't believe in that. All right. I believe in what Jesus Christ said about that sort of thing. You live by the gun, you die by it. But I understand that a lot of other people are not quite there yet, So, but the oligarchy wants to take your guns away. Joe, one of our great callers and listeners, Ted, is on the line. What do you say we go to Ted?
Oh, sure.
All right, hold on. Good evening, Ted. How are you?
Hi, guys. How are you?
Well, you tell us. Is this coherent? Is this interesting radio? Is this making any sense? Or are we just kind of getting too scattershot here?
Oh, it's coherent. You say people feel neutered or disenfranchised or dumbed down. I feel like that a lot sometimes. But it's this sense of responsibility in the government. If these people are so nasty and breaking the laws, how come the DOJ doesn't go after them? That's
because they're bought and paid for. And there's also, on that subject, Ted, there's an awful lot of self-censorship out there that's being imposed. Things have really changed. I used to engage liberals in conversations all the time, and we were in agreement about a lot of stuff. Now, when I talk at a Christmas party about Syria or what happened to Libya and how Trump is the only person who's standing up against that sort of thing, they can't believe what I'm talking about. They cannot believe what they're hearing. And at first they try to laugh me off, and their little group of people around the table all laugh, but then they see I'm serious, and they're totally at a loss. They don't know where to go, what to talk about from there, so they just sort of roll their eyes and start talking about something else. They're ill-equipped. They can't process this stuff anymore.
That clip which you shared with somebody about Hillary's comment, we came, we saw, he died. It just totally rubs me the wrong way. Every time I tell people about that, they kind of look at me askance, like, what are you talking about?
Did I send you a copy of that clip, Ted?
Yes, you did. You're a burqa. Hillary's burqa.
Yes. Maybe I should send that out to everybody on the mailing list. I made a little video clip, about 7 seconds long. Hillary's Burqas Incorporated. It's exclusive distributorship for all the women of Libya. Nobody's got women covered like Hillary's. And you know why? Because feminism begins and ends at home, right?
Yeah. So I did something interesting here. I went and looked up Roger Stone's book, The Clintons' War on Women. I went and looked it up on Amazon.
Uh-huh.
And I couldn't believe it. There's 500 reviews for it. 79% are 5-star, and only 7% are 1-star.
How about that?
What I expected. Now, I don't know if Amazon is really a true representation of cultural society or whatever, but I was very surprised that so many people were endorsing this book on Amazon.
People have had it with the Clintons. People understand that they're the evil twin of the Bushes. Not as wealthy, although they're working on it, Joe, what do you say? Joe was just telling us about Susan Sarandon, who won't vote for Hillary. Did you ever think you'd see that day come, Ted?
No. I mean, that's pretty awesome.
That's pretty awesome. All right. Your buddy Tom here is not going to vote for her. Your buddy Joe's not going to vote for her. A lot of other real lefties that we've had on this show are not going to vote for her. And now Susan Sarandon isn't. I mean, you can't get much more left than her. I mean, that's what they call a limousine liberal, right?
Yeah, I'm not going to vote for her, but I just can't wait to see what's going to happen with the Republican convention, because that'll be very interesting.
Well, we'll see what happens before then because of the rest of the primaries. If Trump has the number locked up going in, there's not going to be much they could do at the Republican convention. But if he comes in there 1 delegate short and they try to take it away from him, 100 delegates short, that's going to be interesting.
Yeah. You always hear so much from the Republican and the right side, democracy. When it's not really that, it's
the party bosses. That's what they did, right? Joe, correct me if I'm wrong. That's what they did on the Democratic side. They got Bernie Sanders. They know he's not going to win, but they wouldn't let any other serious candidates in. And then they ginned up all the debates so that they were on late at night on Sunday nights and Monday nights and stuff.
Oh, yeah. Well, during football games, major football games.
Yeah. So people wouldn't watch them because they didn't want to see. They didn't want to have anybody see Hillary making any mistakes because she's the anointed one. And what happened? Bernie just took the last 5 primaries and caucuses in a row.
Well, Bernie, and then there's a conflict with Bernie and Trump supporters because in these open primaries, where you can go in and vote for either candidate, you need to decide whether you're going to vote for the Republican or the Democratic candidate. There's a conflict of these independent voters of, should I vote for Bernie or Trump? It's not whether I should vote for Bernie or Cruz or Hillary or
Rubio.
Hillary or Rubio. No, it's the only 2 people I can vote for that really make any sense, that are really doing anything, are either Bernie or Donald Trump.
And so, a significant portion of Bernie Sanders' voters, probably the 2 largest blocks of them, the economic voters, and foreign policy voters would probably vote for Trump if Bernie doesn't go all the way. And the liberal ones, the social issue ones, won't vote for either Trump or Hillary, I'm told.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think on social issues, they'll vote for Hillary. I mean, Hillary has...
No, I'm saying that the young feminists, the young women who don't like to be told by the likes of Madeleine Albright, that Madeleine Albright, there's a special place in hell for women who don't vote for Hillary. I'm paraphrasing, for women who don't support other. I don't think young feminists want to hear that. They're voting for Bernie by the droves, and it's got them upset.
You haven't seen Madeleine Albright out there rooting for Hillary lately. Hillary hasn't invited her out since New Hampshire, because I think New Hampshire is where Hillary really showed her true character, saying that she's gotten endorsements from Henry Kissinger, and she brought this woman, the butcher of Serbia, of Yugoslavia, Madeleine Albright, the butcher of Iraq, out on her campaign.
The woman who said 500,000 dead Iraqi children was an acceptable price to pay with those sanctions.
Acceptable. Yeah. And so that really, and I haven't really seen Bill Clinton much either out on the campaign.
Yeah, because Trump shut him down real fast.
Yeah. And then it was Trump who broached the issue prior to around December. Bernie Sanders was not doing very well. He was blaming regime change on climate change, and he wasn't doing very well in attacking Hillary. And it was Donald Trump who led the charge against Hillary as far as making the Middle East a disaster. And it was Donald Trump who broached the subject of Libya. And then when Bernie Sanders brought it up, and Bernie Sanders, I think, made his strongest points in December and January, where he said, he told Hillary Clinton, "I'm proud to say that I am not a friend of Henry Kissinger."
Yeah.
And then broached the subject of Libya. that was because on Libya, it's because Donald Trump broached that subject. It wasn't originated by Bernie Sanders. Donald Trump broached the subject.
That's true. Hey, Ted, from your perspective, how are people dealing with this curveball that's been thrown into this year's election cycle with Donald Trump?
It seems to depend on the age of the people I talk to. A lot of the older folks don't like Donald Trump.
Okay.
A lot of the younger folks like Trump or Sanders. And I really don't know anybody. I mean, the people that I know who like Hillary just seem to have this idea that Hillary's going to sock it to the Republican Party. The Republicans are all.
You're right. It's the partisan stuff. All right, gentlemen, hold on. We're going to take a break. Tom Kiley, INN, right back after this.
Easy.
All right, good friends. Coming down the home stretch on tonight's program, Tom Kiley, INN World Report Radio. Phone lines are still open. You can join us if you'd like. 512-646-1984. Ted is still on the line. And our friend Joe Calhoun. Ted, are you still there?
Yeah. Like I said, I just wanted to reiterate, I was very surprised when I looked on Amazon and saw the Clinton's war against women. They got this little bar chart on the reviews.
Uh-huh.
It shows you the 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, 2-star, 1-star.
Right.
And it's just the 5-star bar chart. It's just across the top.
Uh-huh.
And you look at those others, and there's hardly nothing on the other 4-star, 3-star, down to the 1-star. I was very surprised about that. So, anyway.
Well, she's a lightning rod. I think the Clintons are a lightning rod. I think Roger Stone's a lightning rod, and it is. I don't think it's that surprising to me, but it seems to be surprising and of concern to a lot of the people on the left that Hillary's negatives are so high, and there's so many Democrats that don't want her. It's reflected in the turnout in the primaries. The Democratic Party's primaries are about 30%, 33% down from where they were either the last time around or certainly 2008, whereas the Republican Party's turnout is 50, 100, sometimes 150% higher in some places. And that's because of Donald Trump. And that's because there's a lot of Democrats crossing over for him. So,
yeah,
interesting.
Hey, I got one little quick thing I want to mention to Joe. It's a little bit different subject.
Okay.
Joe, I was glad to see the the Supreme Court threw out that case against your neighboring states who were upset about the marijuana, the legal marijuana in Colorado kind of seeping over into the neighboring states. Was it Kansas? Do you know what I'm talking about?
It was either I think it's Kansas. I do think it's Kansas, yeah.
Anyway.
In other words, what, Kansas has a license to have marijuana shops now or what?
No, they were upset that Colorado had them. They felt it violated federal law because they claim it's causing problems for their police in the neighboring states around Colorado because of a bleed over.
I have to tell you, it's causing problems for people who rent cars out here and go through Utah and Nevada.
All the roaches laying around on the floor.
No, and the problem is that the police in Utah and Nevada, our license plates are green, and so they note green license plates going through their state and pull them over more because of the marijuana laws out here.
So maybe somebody just was having recreational marijuana in Colorado, forgot to get rid of it before they left the state.
Yeah, got rid of the roach. Yeah, exactly.
Wow,
they get into trouble, especially in Nevada. And the other thing is that there's more dispensaries. I live in a town of 400. There's 2 dispensaries. There's more dispensaries per capita in Colorado than there are Starbucks.
I couldn't believe it, Joe and Ted. And Fancy's on the line. We're going to get to Fancy in just a moment. And listeners, I was in Denver week before last for a couple of days. I had some business out there. And again, where I stayed, in the neighborhood I stayed at, I had to walk a little bit to get on the train and all. And block after block, Joe, there were these marijuana dispensaries, sometimes 2 on the same side of the street in the same block, sometimes 2 more on the other side of the street in the same block, 4 of them in one long block or more.
Yeah.
All over the place. I don't know. What is it? It's like a bar? You got your favorite bartender that you go to get this? It's crazy how many of them there are out there.
Well, there's also a population surge in Colorado because a lot of people, families with one family member has epilepsy or something.
Right.
Are moving to the state. And then, of course, we're being recalifornicated again. And so now the rents in Denver are about as high for an apartment as they are in New York City.
Wow. Well, listen, let's move on because Fancy's on the line. She has not called in a great long time. Ted, thank you so much for calling.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
Okay. Call again soon. All right. Let's go to Fancy here. Hold on one second. Let me just fix this. Here we go. Okay. Let's go to Fancy. Hi, Fancy. How you doing? You haven't called in a while.
Well, I listen, though, all the time. It's a good thing I don't call all the time, really.
Why is that?
Hey,
well, it's a bad thing that you don't call more often. I'll say that.
Well, I'm going to segue right into that last caller's subject. And,
sure.
The thing is, I'm in my 60s, and I know a lot of people that smoke pot. I just wish pot was legal. There's so many more things that we could do with our tax dollars than persecute people that are just harmless pot smokers. Pot is just like nothing. Sure, some people have problems with maybe not having, a clear mind because they smoke too much pot, but I know so many people that smoke pot, and the only thing is, if they get busted, they're going to have problems.
Fancy, you've heard me say it on this show many times, when I was in the United States Army in the early to mid 1970s, for the first 2 years, everybody I knew was stoned. And a lot of the times, even on duty, okay? And people were taking care of their PTSD that were rotating out of Vietnam and stuff, you know what I mean? But when I got out after a while, I got a little older, I stopped smoking pot. I haven't smoked pot in decades, but it didn't do me any harm in that sense, if you ask me, to your point.
Right. And that brings me to Bernie, because Bernie has come out, he's not for the drug war, and he wants to end all this mass incarceration for nonviolent crimes. He doesn't like the private prison industry. And
that's great.
Does. Just letting you know that.
Well, yeah, and you know what? If they made a few less cruise missiles that have so much money left over, that they could do the right thing with people who have drug problems and give them treatment and programs rather than a prison cell.
Right, absolutely. Another thing I want to mention that's positive about Bernie, though, is he believes in labeling GMO foods. And I don't know if any other candidate, even Trump, I don't know if he's addressed that, but this is a real problem. We're not knowing where our meat's coming from. They're playing show games with our food. And they just passed in this thing called the DARK Act, which puts us in the dark as far as labeling our food. That's going on right now with Congress. They're voting about the DARK Act. So I don't know if you guys know about
if there's any more proof that anybody needs that this country is being run by an oligarchy, I would say food labeling is all that you should need, because what's wrong with the truth about what's in your food and putting a label on to tell you about that? If people don't want to buy it because of that, then it's because they're right or they're wrong. If they're wrong, the media has more than enough firepower to show them where they are wrong, but they can't. So they won't. So now they would just shut up and take it, and who cares what's in it? It's food, for crying out loud.
Yeah, the big corporations don't want us to know where the food's coming from, so they made a law that they don't have to label it. And now when you go buy meat in Texas, I think it's against the law for them to say where it comes from.
Yeah. It's like, Fancy, you and Joe and I were old enough to remember that story, Soylent Green, right?
Yeah.
That's where they're going with this stuff. They're going to make it more and more and more artificial chemical stuff, My wife and I, when we buy, I buy like a half a gallon of milk at a time, lasts us a week or whatever. We put it in our coffee and stuff, and I try to get organic, and sometimes the market is just out of it, and I have to get a quote unquote regular milk. And so I don't get the full half gallon. I get a quart, and we call it the chemical milk. Sorry, I had to get the chemical milk.
Oh, yeah. And I can tell the difference too, because I use organic cream in my coffee.
And
you can
this is ridiculous. This is your food. And what's going to happen is going to get worse and worse. And, it's going to just be, in the end, maybe you heard me say this on the show, Fancy. It's the difference. Like, you know, when you're using real ingredients that are natural, and you're a cook, you know, and you're making something. It's a labor of love. You're putting nature together in a form that's digestible and delicious and healthy for your friends and your family. And that's the way things are done when you make things from scratch with honest ingredients. The corporate world wants to back a dump truck up full of this powder and a dump truck up of that powder and pour it into a big hopper, and they've got all kind of preservatives and chemicals and whatnot in it, and mix it all up and add a little water, and then there's a conveyor belt, and they poop this stuff out, and it goes into a heater, and now you got a cookie, and you know, it looks like a cookie, but there's no comparison, and the ingredients are going to get worse and worse and worse.
Oh, yeah. Like in Homer Simpson, he goes to this taco place, and it just says meat. You order chicken or beef or whatever, it's all just meat.
Which begs the question, you know, what part of the chicken exactly are the McNuggets? You know, so.
Well, yeah, I like local produce and all that kind of stuff, and I think Hillary doesn't. She's big ag.
Oh, I'm sure. And then we're running out of time, but I'll end it with one thing. Did you all see how they had to change some laws? They're shipping chicken to China to get processed and McNuggetized, and then they're sending it back here frozen.
Oh,
talk about jobs, and you know.
No.
Yeah, and God knows what happens to it in China. You know, the dogs are dying from the dog food and stuff. All right, good friends, that's it. Fancy and Joe had the last word. Good night, everybody. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Fancy.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
We'll be back on Thursday night. Thank you very much, Tom Caliana, World Report Radio.